Bonjour, je m'appelle Semina An. Would you please wear the device because I will present in English. I'm so sorry, I cannot speak in French. First of all, I would like to appreciate for giving me this wonderful chance to introduce the Namhansanseong in Korea. And today I would like to present the current state of conserving and managing on Namhansanseong's authenticity. So this picture is taken by the helicopter. This presentation comprises with 4 parts. Construction history, overview of Namhansanseong, and conservation and management, and future plan. The literal meaning of Namhansanseong means Nam means south, Han means Han River, Sansong means mountain fortress. The mountain fortress is south of the Han River. Let's look at the old drawing in the background. This painting was drawn by Namhansanseong in 1753. It shows geographical advantage as a mountain fortress. It's located on high flat top about 500 meters above sea level, and it also has a natural moat provided by Han River. It's safely fortified by nature itself. During the Silla Kingdom period, here, Namhansanseong had initially constructed in 672 as known as Jujangsong Fortress. Unlike castles for noble and lord by feudal system in Europe, Joseon political structure was unitary state, so the one king ruled over the whole land. So it was important to protect the king's safety, to maintain the whole country. And during the Joseon dynasty, here, after the king had experience of flee as Japanese invasion of Korea 1592 and Igwar's rebellions, the Namhansanseong was officially reconstructed as a king's refuge in 1624. And after then, Qing China invaded to Joseon twice. The king Injo took refuge into Namhansanseong for 47 days in second Manchu Qing invasion of Korea. After then, the Namhansanseong had underwent constantly reinforcement, repaired until the 19th century. Let's see the location. Nowadays, Seoul is administrative district is this. And during the Joseon dynasty, the capital city was Hanyang. Then you can see the distance from the Hanyang city to Namhansanseong is 25 kilometers. And this picture shows the construction from the 1624 to 1626, when main fortress walls and Yeonjubong outwork built at first, following the Jujangsong fortress, the 7th century fortress. And in historical records, 4,000 people live in the Namhansanseong. The Namhansanseong embodies great topographical advantage from the point of defensive view. But however, can you imagine why so many people lived inside of the fortress despite the inconvenience of daily life? The reason why Joseon government carried out the accept the tax who lives in the Namhansanseong, same as the case of where we went yesterday, the fortress Ratos. And in order to maintain for the fortress as usual, the residents were deliberately formed inside of the fortress. It shows the Namhansanseong after an experience of first and second Manchu Qing invasion of Korea. During the war broke out, the Qing troop took over the Balbong Peak in the east of the main fortress, and they attacked from there to inside. So to protect this area, Namhansanseong was extended with 2 defensive walls and 4 outworks built in the east and the south as a as an active defense. In 18th century, when the reign of King Sukjong, the Namhansanseong was completely its present form. The entire fortress measures about 12.7 kilometers, and the entire heritage area is 215 hectares. Now let us see the overview of Namhansanseong. Namhansanseong was inscribed on the World Heritage List with criteria 2 and 4 in 2014. As a result of various rounds of improvement repair during the Joseon Dynasty, the fortress body exhibits the architectural development from the 7th century to the 19th century. The distinct features of each period, especially so in development of warfare. In the 7th century, the former form of the wall, constructed with the small cone-shaped stones, and after the second Manchu Qing invasion of Korea, introduced the artillery from the Qing China, and then there is a clear difference construction method with the size of the stones was bigger than before to against the firearms. The auxiliary gate also changed. The initial hidden gate was large enough for about one person to pass through, and then after then the size of the hidden gate increased as wagon loaded with gunpowder had to pass. In the running of times, various round military weapons are introduced to the Namhansanseong. These different firearms were used during the 17th century. Namhansanseong actively adopted the bastions with cannon embrasure and shooting apertures, lookouts, and defensive posts as confront of the new and effective Dutch artilleries. The techniques employed to construct the walls and individual components are responded to the technique development of weaponry. Keeping to see Namhansanseong's criteria 2 description. In the East Asia, there is a Chinese principle of capital construction model, and the principle on the location of ancestor shrine has to locate on the left side of the palace, and the altar for deities of earth and grain has to locate it on the right side of the palace. It was applied into the constructing Hanyang capital city and Namhansanseong during the Joseon Dynasty. The Namhansanseong is the only temporary palace which is equipped with a royal shrine and altar for deities. It proves its special status. Namhansanseong also met criteria 4. Namhansanseong is the only case of where both an emergency palace and local city constructed together in Korea. This picture took in 1909. So you can see the Namhansanseong village and Namhansanseong palace together. As I mentioned, the royal ancestor shrine located on left side of the palace. The military Buddhist temples in Namhansanseong are a unique case of mobilization of Buddhist monks, the construction of a fortress. The 10 Buddhist temples in Namhansanseong are used as living quarters during the construction, and later on they managed the fortress and weapons in normal times, and then when monks defended the fortress in emergencies. And nowadays, only one Buddhist temple remain original form. The most of them had been destroyed during the Japanese colonial period, as the temple has installed a charcoal and weapons warehouse. In the property zone are components comprising the overview of Namhansanseong, all included in property in its entirety with adequate conservation measures. About 600 residents still live in the center of the fortress, so this area is not included as property zone. The buffer zone extends to include the entire surrounding area, which is a provincial park designated around the mountain. And the elements consisting the property are individually recognized as either state designated or province designated heritage. Namhansanseong is mainly regulated following the laws of a property zone. The blue-lined boundary is delineated by Cultural Heritage Protection Act. In accordance with this act, the height of the renovated and reconstructed building must be lower than 9 meters, and their roof must be the Korean traditional style. And the construction of a new building is not permitted except for the public facilities. The green colored area shows the Natural Park Act. Any commercial hotels and other lodgings are not permitted. These laws strictly regulate the property and buffer zone in order to protect its cultural heritage and natural ecosystem from the diverse urban and touristic development pressures. Now let's see the conserving and managing the fortress wall. Largely, Namhansanseong fortress were comprised with the rampart and parapet. The height of the fortress is between 3 and 7 meters, which still remain in almost perfect condition. And it was constructed with a nice and granite. Parapet is a raw fence structure installed on top of the rampart and to protect the soldier. One parapet unit is called ta in Korean. Namhansanseong has 1,940 ta. And one length around appears to be 3 and 4.5 meters. It differs depending on the position. In one parapet, you can see the 3 holes. Those are gun firing embrasures. And its difference is the shooting range. And between the parapet, you can see the aperture is for the shooting arrow. And regarding the fortress construction method in the south, steep and high wall to complement the gentle terrain. In the north is the low wall using the steep terrain. In the east and the west, they combine the method between in the south and north. The front faced stones of the fortress were stacked in 3 ways. The first stones are stacked by gradually pushing the stones backward and thereby giving the walls an angle. And the second, the stones are stacked by actually tilting the stone to back, and that are all together, the stones are formed a slanting wall. And the last one is that the stones were stacked by actually had a slanting front. This one is the Namhansanseong parapet is one of the unique case of fortress in Korea because mostly parapet constructed with gray bricks. It had functioned to soak absorption from the cannon attacks. There are largely 3 construction ways of the parapet in Namhansanseong. To determine the direction of a fortress conservation, repair, and restoration, a study on guidelines development of a fortress had conducted by Cultural Heritage Administration in 2008. According to the result of a study, the guideline on conservation and management for fortress set in 2009, all state designated fortresses must be followed this guideline. The repair process has 4 steps. Meanwhile, at the planning steps, it had considered that which value to be conserved and how to determine the range and level of the repair and restoration of the fortress. Through the concerning the conservation philosophy from the Viola-Dick's Unity of Style and John Ruskin's Preservation of original form and charters relating the UNESCO World Heritage Conservation, the Cultural Heritage Protection Act, and the guideline of the fortress are based on the theory of John Ruskin. So it also considered that minimum repair to preserve the original form. Since 1975, the fortress body has been continuously repaired and maintained. Overall maintenance of the fortress body has been completed. Bongam and Hanbong extended defensive wall have not been repaired since the end of the Joseon dynasty. However, only the vegetation managed the removing work. So the original form is still kept intact, so it's highly valuable. The detailed plan had completed in 2017. Following this plan, conservation aimed at maintenance of the current state will be conducted in Bongam and Hanbong extended defensive walls. Here is the Namhansanseong parapets repair works started from 1981. The same as the fortress body, the extended defensive walls have been maintained the original forms. The parapet problems have been happened from the initial repair range. Those have appeared parapet collapse and joint detached step by step since the heavy snow of 2010. There are two main reasons of the damage, which are problem of the traditional construction method and the seasonal temperature differences. As Namhansanseong is situated high altitude and there is a temperature differences about 4 degrees below the mountain. So the representative damage case is that joint quicklime detached. And the main reason is that separation of material between filling and joint. So this is because mud inside freeze and expands during the winter, it pushing away the joint. The problem of joint detached had happened during the Joseon dynasty as well. So the change of the joint thickness and method is in evidence. Let us see the change with the drawing and photos. In the beginning, the main filling material made with mud and rubbers. And the joint plastered with a quicklime between the gray bricks. The further developed in the filling, the mud mixed with plenty of quicklime, and the quicklime joint completed filled between the bricks. Lately, the parapets are stacked and joined with the quicklime mortar, which comprised with the quicklime and soil. Regarding this repeated damage on parapet, Namhansanseong World Heritage Center approached it in two ways. First, materials, and second, construction method. The material had considered gray brick and quicklime, and the construction method had considered that how to fill it. In the 70s, the gray brick had used by factory product, which Korean industry standard recognized. In manufactures a large quantity and cheap, but it was weak to adhesive force because it has a slick surface. And of course, the regulation about the material, we must reuse the original brick. In the history record, ancestors used the lime, the calcium oxide. In the 70s and 80s, the joint of the parapet was plastered with a quicklime, and the inside was filled with rubber and quicklime. In order to systematic maintenance, the study on the conservation and management plan had been conducted by National Research Institute of Cultural Heritage from 2012 and 14. The result of the study to make handmade gray brick, to add inorganic binder mixed with the quicklime, to use quicklime joint on joint plastering and filling all together. After then, Cultural Heritage Administration and Research Institute and Namhansanseong Center discussed that it's right to use inorganic binder in Namhansanseong. In order to do more in-depth study, Namhansanseong Center conducted own experiment in 2015 to find the suitable quicklime ratio for the Namhansanseong condition. It compared the 5 different mixed ratio, including the present standard by the administration and the result of the study by National Research Institute, and using the high oily strengthened Portland cement recommended by the administration. Those are built next to the palace, and we've seen a year's change. The best result of the experiment was case 3, using high oily strength Portland cement. And the center was consulted by qualified heritage expert in order to parapet repair from the east gate to the third hidden gate. The conservation plan was approved by Cultural Heritage Administration, and this ratio recommended to the other heritage site by the administration. In other words, this experiment judged validity and reliability by the government. Meanwhile, this ratio experiment is a still ongoing project to improve on, in a way, on traditional method. The history of repair works is all documented. The records are kept in the Namhansanseong World Heritage Center. The parapet from the east gate to the third hidden gate, it's currently being dismantled and repaired. Now we can see the academic and promotion activities in Namhansanseong. Yes, just 2 more slides, sorry. So annually, Namhansanseong World Heritage Center organized a national or international symposium with many experts. Before the inscription, Namhansanseong discussed and focusing on the discovering of OUV of Namhansanseong. After the inscription in 2014, we are more focusing on to find the practical conservation and management way. And in Namhansanseong, we are conducting the many activities relating the academic experience and performance programs, and all the residence programs are also conducted, and they are active as a heritage keeper. And nowadays, Namhansanseong World Heritage Center conducting a comprehensive management plan second for sustainable conservation, and the plan for we conduct in 5 different ways. So it will be carried step by step from 2019 to 2028. Those are what I wanted to say today. So thank you for attention. Thank you. Merci.
Bonjour tout le monde. Je tiens à remercier tout d'abord le département d'Aude et son comité scientifique pour l'organisation excellente de ce colloque, ainsi que de m'avoir invité à ces événements inoubliables. Au Japon, on dit qu'on ne peut pas mourir sans voir Carcassonne, mais désormais, je dirais qu'on ne peut pas mourir sans voir Carcassonne et ses châteaux sentinelles. Excusez-moi, j'ai préparé ma présentation en anglais. Définition de 3 concepts de base. D'abord, himeji-jo, hikone-jo. Jo signifie en japonais château. Et puis, joka, ça c'est la ville qui s'est développée autour du château. Mais il ne faut pas se tromper du mot château, parce qu'on pense normalement que cette partie est un château. Mais en fait, ça c'est un donjon. c'est un symbole de l'autorité et personne n'y habite. Le château, en tout cas à l'époque d'Edo, it's in English, it's a keep, turrets, and palaces and garden. So also the word samurai means soldiers. Samurais were guardian soldiers who defended aristocracy or temples, which were the center of power before the period when, for the first time in the 12th century, there was a samurai government in Kamakura. Then there were period of local power, samurai capturing local powers and fighting among themselves or fighting with the temples or aristocracy and involving peasants. And from 1400 to 1600, it was a pure period of warfare, internecine warfare among samurai lords, which had a local power. Then what happened was that after the second half of the 16th century, unifiers appeared. Aude Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa, until the time when, with the Sekigahara battle in 1600, there was a quasi-centralized government in Edo, which is today's Tokyo, and from 1603 there was the period it's called Edo, which lasted until 1868, about 300 years. So I would like to talk about the castles and castle towns of the Edo period. Before the Edo period, there were castles, 20,000 to 30,000 medieval castles, like what we saw in last tour, on the mountains. And on the mountains, nobody really lived. It was the fortification for battles. And lords lived underneath, below the mountains, and villages were not organized but developed also below the mountain. And the main road linking the fortification and villages was the most important. And this creates a very different structure from the Edo castles and castle towns. Now, I will talk about, so there were 180 castle towns during the Edo period, among which 100 had a keep. 20 among these castles, among the keeps, were created directly by the centralized government Tokugawa, with their engineers chosen mainly from the central part. And about about 100 castle towns were created anew in the first half of the 17th century, and the rest was the reformation of the previously existed medieval castles, but in a very standardized, reformed in very standardized forms with or without a keep, palaces and gardens, and the town around the castle. So we had a very particular, not universally shared problem in Japan, because in 1992, our government put both Himeji-jo and Hikonejo on the tentative list. And in 1993, Himeji-jo was listed on the World Heritage list. So after that period, after that year, we had a double challenge. What should be the OUV for Hikonejo, and also, if you look at this, Himeji-jo was listed as the best wooden architecture of the Edo period, early Edo period, and it was this keep and 2 gates which were considered as composing properties. Now, the Hikonejo, on which we worked for the last years, was listed not as an architecture only, but with the town which developed around and in harmony with nature. So the words on the list were different, but the problem of not only of OUV's authenticity, but because Hikone town is inhabited by many people, they wanted modern comfort, roads which are bigger than the Edo period. So urbanization had its trace on the town. So in addition to the OUV and the authenticity problem, we had the challenge of responding to the question of how we can use the town, which originally was considered as very original. So if you take a look, the Edo castle towns look alike in structures like this. You have the keep in the middle with palaces and gardens and turrets, which are considered as a castle. And then normally we had 3 moats surrounding. And in the first section of the moat, the most important vassals lived and participated in political decision making. And then between the second and the third moat, you had residences from 4 samurais and merchants, artisans, and temples. The reason why they were placed like this was, as I said, in the medieval period, warlords fought among themselves with temples, peasants, and so the three unifiers that I talked about all wanted to create a town inside the enclave together with merchants and artisans who supported samurais, and they put some of the temples from outside to within the moats and within the enclave, so that they don't intermingle with peasants. So, and then, different from the European feudal lords, the samurais and lords were not property owner of the land, but they had the control over the production of the land outside. So they were like civil servants. And Tokugawa government would locate the laws as they liked. These were the network of towns who were linked with the fidelity to the government, which at that time was as an effect, and not as an objective of pacifying and put an end to the medieval internecine warfare. So this was the concept of Japanese Edo castle and castle towns. And in order to show authenticity, we are greatly helped by the Nara government that we talked about a lot this morning. It is true that particularly for those buildings in woods and stones, Nara document, which said it's okay if designs, materials, and functions are like the original form. So for buildings, that helped a lot. But for urbanization of the town, we had a more difficult problem because the third mode was disappeared. Now we excavate and we could find the traces of the third mode, which we would like to make the third, how do you say, historical, protect as historical sites. Also, this part is the castle and some upper class vassals' residences. And so, first of all, we wanted to make Castle Town our OUV, which was a Japanese way to put an end to medieval internecine warfare. And we invited some foreign experts, including Professor Faucherre, and they all thought that Castle Town, as expressed by Hikone, would be the alternative concept to Himeji, which was a keep as an architecture. So we used this part as this part, and then we wanted to incorporate this part, which are merchant district, and this part too. And we have zones that are very typical of the Edo town, but still we we think that if we say castle town, town has a connotation of an entire surface, and particularly in the ears of foreign people, then you don't think castle town is an element, is a serial of elements. In Hikone, we have all the elements of the castle town in almost authentic form, but still we cannot convince that this is a town. So we have this challenge, and we think that we can also say that buildings are quite authentically reconstituted. However, Nara government helped us a lot, and also because the Nara document enlarged the scope of documents, information sources justifying authenticity. We have all illustrations of buildings only from 1800. So, for example, we have these traces of the town in that exactly the way Edo period conceived of, and because we have all the elements, we can think of representative of the Edo castle towns. We don't know what kind of buildings there were before 1800. For example, we have all the professions in the merchant district, and we can retrace it. We have city plans, but before 1800, probably the roofs were in roofs were not as today in ardoise, slates, but straws, and so it is quite difficult to show, except that it's true that the Edo period had this particular town structures that all the population, and on average, the population which lived within the fortress, the enclave, were 30,000. It's no comparison with European cities. It's big in fortification, and also they created distribution logistics, creating the horizontal roads from east to west always, and not to prevent warfare, they created a zoning, and also to so that people lived in autonomous professions. So we thought that we can arrive at showing the authenticity, but today people think that it will take too much time to show authenticity of all these elements, so they think that only the buildings within the first mode, the second mode, which are here, should be considered as composing elements, and only this part, only the the ground that is covered by the law and protected by law, and show the samurai government buildings like we saw. There are buildings. This is built in 1800, and this is authentic. And also, there was lots of buildings which are considered as reconstituted based on, which is conformed to the Nara document. And I enumerated those buildings which are considered as authentic. We have, we lack the upper class samurai residence, which conserves still the Edo period materials only at the back, and the entire thing is cannot be considered as authentic even by the Nara document. So the challenge of OUB, the challenge of authenticity, and the challenge of proving that this is a town are still lingering over us. And I would appreciate it very much if you could, if you have brilliant ideas about how to prove these difficult questions. Thank you very much. Sorry,